Alrighty, welcome. This is part 4, sections 5 and 6. Avoiding credit card debt and purchasing used, as well as the importance of saving. Let's go ahead and get into these. So, I'm going to be honest. I may not wear them in these videos, but one of my favorite articles of clothing to wear is a flannel. And to be honest, all of my flannels are the best type of flannels you can get because they are from Goodwill. Yeah, I mean, I love getting flannels from Goodwill, mainly because I feel like they have character. You know, every flannel has a story before I get my hands on it. It's, I don't know, it just feels like I'm cheating and not being genuine if I buy a flannel from, an actual store, you know? Anyways, there's another reason that I like shopping at Goodwill, and that's because I get to save money. I essentially get to have the same thing, clothes, except I get to have them a lot cheaper. There's also some other ways that you can make sure that you're saving money on clothes, and it could just be buying, slightly, I don't want to say used, but slightly damaged items. Another example as far as clothing goes is that there's some overstock items that you can get at places like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. You can also sometimes find that items are they're a little bit weird there. Like I got a pair of pants once, or they were shorts, but they were denim material where the logo of the company, instead of being on the front left, it was in the middle back of the pants. It was really weird and messed up, but hey, they looked cool, so I got them anyways. You could buy a refrigerator. You could get there's stores that sell refrigerators, but they sell it was scratched on the show floor, so the first store couldn't sell it anymore, so they sold it to this store at a discount. So then you can then buy it at a discount. If the if the fridge is going to be put and it's going to have a wall on that side anyways, and it has a scratch there, who cares? You're never going to notice it, but you will notice paying a significantly less, right? So the first thing that you want to be doing when we're talking about, as far as talking about saving money is, think about saving money by buying used. You may not even notice the difference, right? I mean, the moment that you get your hands on something, the moment you buy something new, it becomes used anyways. What's up, Darth? So why not just buy used in the first place and save yourself the depreciation, right? Hand-me-downs, that's another one. Don't feel bad about getting hand-me-downs. One of my favorite things nowadays, now that I have my own money that I'm spending, is actually getting stuff from family members, right? Getting tools from family members, or getting, I don't know, it's been mainly tools for me, I'm not going to lie. But if there's I don't know, a pair of shoes that someone wore once and they just so happen to fit me, yeah, I'll take them. Sure, right? Buying used, or just not buying new, how about that? That can save you loads of money and you still get the same utility out of the item. So let's go ahead and move on to these deadly pieces of plastic. Okay, these deadly pieces of plastic are known as credit cards. See, credit cards, you're not spending your own money, you are borrowing from a bank when you swipe one of these. Yeah. There are debit cards. I know a lot of my students have those. When you swipe a debit card, you're taking it out of the checking account at your bank. However, when you swipe a credit card, you're borrowing that money and you're going to have to pay it back, right? And here's the deal. You can end up spending more than you make in a given month, which then means that you're not going to be able to pay all of that credit card balance off, which means you're then going to have some money that you're going to owe interest on, right? And the thing is, when it comes to credit cards, interest rates are really high because everything that you buy is essentially being consumed, and the person that's, giving you this money on the credit card, none of that money they're giving you is collateralized. My home loan is collateralized, meaning that if I don't pay my mortgage, they take my home. However, if I don't pay my credit card bill, they don't really have anything that they can take, because if you're buying McNuggets, they can't really take your McNuggets. I don't think they would want your McNuggets after you ate them. Right? So this leads to a lot of people running up debts because they don't budget and they end up spending more than they have. It turns out, guys, if you're using cash, you can't spend more than you have, right? When you run out of cash, you're out. But some folks, because they have not practiced budgeting, they'll use credit cards and they'll find that they have themselves a debt at the end of the month that they then owe 15, 20% on. Yeah. So these interest rates are really higher than normal loans because, they're not collateralized. Okay. So be careful. If you trust yourself to use one, you have to pay it off in full each month. It can be one of the best things that you do for your credit, right? Because it demonstrates to borrowers that you're able to pay back money, but it can also be one of the worst things you do, not just for your credit, right? But also yourself. Even way down the line after you're done, using an item, you'll still be paying for it if you use a credit card to pay for it and have not paid it off and you're only making the minimum payments. We can talk about the right to repair stuff afterwards. That's interesting. So, here's one of my favorite examples. I pulled this from a certain place in this course, but this little practice question here says, suppose the outstanding balance on Christy's credit card is $2,000 and her annual interest rate is 18%, which means each month she has to pay 1.5%. If Christy makes a payment of $50 this month, her outstanding balance will decline by how much? So after she pays $50, how much will her balance, the amount she owed, will have gone down? I'll give you a hint, it's not $50, right? Because after she pays the minimum $50, we're then going to have to add in 1.5% in interest. So that brings it, from $2,000 to $1,950 because she paid $50, but then we have to increase it about $30 because we have to add in that 1.5% interest. So really, her bills, while she paid $50, it's almost as if she only got $20 closer to paying it off. Man, talking about a good way to lose your money. Yeah, guys, the biggest thing that you can do to make sure that you have a higher income is to maybe not worry about doing something to have a high income. But just because people have a high income doesn't mean that they're in debt up to their eyeballs. And if you have a high income, it's not going to matter if you're giving thousands of dollars away in debt each month, right? Because you might as well make that much less. Yeah. So one thing you can do to make it so that you're essentially making more money is to not have debt. That way, all the money you make goes to you instead of going to people that you're in debt to. Yeah. So this here is, Dave Ramsey. He's a real big, personal finance guru, and his shtick is that he tells his folks that take his classes or listens to his advice to cut up their credit cards. Myself, I've had a lot of people that I know that have ran up huge credit cards debts. I know people that have racked up large debts due to other scenarios that came up in their lives. For me, I follow this advice myself. I don't use credit cards, right? However, I do realize that there are some young people out there that they don't have the ability to save up. They don't have the ability to save up for something, to buy a used car. They don't have the ability to show some other way that they're, essentially, if someone ever checks your credit for something, if credit cards are a great way to start building credit because you can borrow small amounts and pay small amounts back. So I'm aware that not every person cannot use credit cards. However, most people, I will say most people have a hard time being able to trust themselves, right? So for most people, I will say, try budgeting first. If you can budget, then it may be a safe bet for you to use a credit card to build a credit score. However, do not get into a credit card until you know that you can budget your money, okay? Because if you cannot budget, you will find yourselves running large debts and paying way more for the things that you're consuming, okay? So, this is another fun example. Let's say you buy some new clothes, and you go to a once-in-a-lifetime concert with your friends and buy more and more until you gradually hit your credit limit of $2,000 at 18% annual interest rate. You could only manage to pay the minimum of $50 each month. So how many months will it take you to pay off the credit card? Do you think 60, 80, 182? That's oddly specific. Test-taking strategies here. Well, it would take 182 months, okay? Because sure, you're paying $50 each month, but you also have to pay 18% interest over the course of a year. That is a lot of money, right? So sure, you're paying $50, but you're adding back on 1.5% each month. So this is the fun part. So how much would that $2,000, how much would that end up costing you in interest? Okay, so not just paying back the $2,000. Okay, so you owe the $2,000 back, but how much extra? How much extra are you going to owe? Well, my key didn't work. $2,400. Okay, and guys, this is just an interest. Okay, so you pay back the $2,000, and then on top of that, you will have paid back $2,400, so $4,400. And notice here, it's 182 months, which is about 15 years. So long after you sucked down that chili dog at a concert, 15 years later, you're still paying for it, or just paying it off. Okay, guys, it is so important that you do not run up debt and pay large interest, especially on a credit card, as the interest rates are incredibly high. So there are some strategies once you find yourself in debt on how to get out. There are two relatively well-known strategies known as the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. Both of them are doing the same thing but from different sides. Okay, there's a great video if you'd like to watch that, but since we're here talking about it in a video already, I'll just go ahead and go on to the next slide where we explain it. So the snowball is all for the people that need it up here, that they need some motivation, right? It can be really demotivating for someone to try to do something like getting out of debt, which is very, very hard to do, right? Because a lot of times for folks, they get into debt because they find themselves not having enough money to be able to do what they want. So as they're scaling their life back, they're purchasing less of the things they used to enjoy. They're being more disciplined. It can be really hard to do that, and then notice, oh man, I only got like $120 extra towards paying off my $40,000 in debt. That's demotivating, right? So what the snowball does is you start with the smallest debt and you pay it off first. Yeah, that way you pay off one of your debtors, and you can actually see some momentum occurring here. And then you take all the money that you would have paid and start paying on the other ones. Okay, so essentially what you're doing is you make the minimum payments on everything except your lowest one. Okay, your smallest amount, and then you pay that one off as fast as you can. Okay, pay it off as fast as you can. Then there's the avalanche. The avalanche is still the same thing. You're not going to pay on anything else, okay, except the one with the highest interest rate. Okay, now this one is more for people that are in debt, but they know that they can budget and they want to just be out of debt the quickest. Okay, so you pay off the one with the highest interest rate, which means you're paying the least amount in interest, and that means you're then therefore saving the most amount of money by paying debt. Because of course, guys, if I'm in debt, $40,000, and I have and I owe 10% interest on that debt, every dollar that I put in to pay off that debt, I'm essentially earning 10% interest, because I would have paid 10% interest for it if I didn't pay extra. Okay, so the avalanche, you start with the highest interest rate and you pay that one off first. The snowball, you start with the smallest debts first. That way you can pay them off quicker, and you see a lot more momentum happening. Whereas with the avalanche, you may not see a lot of momentum, as the one with the highest interest rate may not be your smallest debt. Okay, so here they are listed again, okay, in order of what you're doing if you're doing either of these strategies. Okay, so back to this idea of buying used, and we're talking about loans now, so we're kind of intermingling these two ideas. Take a look at buying a new car versus buying a used car. Okay, check this out. You could get a 2018 new Ford Focus for $17,000. Okay, and it would have I guess you can see here this estimated finance payment of $274 a month. Okay, whereas if you buy it used, look at this, almost half the monthly payment. Okay, and here's the beautiful thing, guys. This $142 a month, a part of this monthly payment is interest. If you're able to save up money to buy a used car, you won't pay any interest at all. Okay, so one of the smarter things that you can do, before I go on, it's not really what I'm trying to get at with this slide, but a little piece of advice anyways, is once you have purchased a new car, start putting money aside in a savings account so you can save up, so that when your current car that you're driving poops out, you have money set aside to purchase a new car. Look at that. And when I say new, of course, I don't mean new. I mean new to you, okay? Never buy a new car. Never buy a new car. Because the moment you drive this thing off the lot, it's going to depreciate very, very quickly. Take a look at this, okay? Take a look at this. This new car costs $30,000. After a year, it's only worth $24,000. 2 years, $20,000. 3 years, $17,000. 5 years out, this car is worth almost a third of what it was purchased for. Okay, or what it was new, I should say. Okay? Trust me, you ain't driving anywhere near enough to make a near $20,000 in cost worth it over 5 years. Okay? Do not buy new. It is not worth it. Because really, I mean, what do you think? What do you think you're going to get? The new car smells, a cool backup camera. Those are relatively commonplace in new cars today. What else is in new cars? But practically, even older cars, most of them are even having aux cords in them now. So, I mean, what are you getting? You're not getting anything, right? A fancy computer, that's just another thing they can break and you'll have to fix. Okay? It doesn't make sense to buy new. Buy used. Not only are you saving a lot of money, but you're really not missing out on much. Okay? And hey, as you get older, the used cars, those were the new cars of the past, right? I mean, it's 2020 now. If I'm buying a car that's 5 years old, which has depreciated to a third of its value, that was a new car in 2015. There were some pretty sick new cars in 2015. So I'll just wait till 2020 to buy my 2015 car. Okay? Okay. Another thing as well, I know here in the Midwest, we don't necessarily have the ability of having public transport. But if you ever find yourself able to use public transport, Darth, that's a great idea. Yeah, use public transit if you can. Okay, because oftentimes it'll be much smaller because we talk about specialization. The people that run these public transits, it's an economy of scale in which the cost to them of transporting you around is much lower than you transporting you around. Okay, so taking the bus, taking a train if you're in an area that has one. Taxis, probably not so much. But do not buy new cars. Okay? That's my advice. Of course, if you want to be in financial ruin, go for it. Get that new car, right? And then, 5 years later, regret it. Oh well. You can also not just, buy used when it comes to cars. Think of getting something in a lower grade, right? I think one of the best examples is, I'm going to nerd out here. I don't want to get them out and show you. It may take too much time for me to pull out, a specific card. But I have Magic cards, and Magic cards are graded. They're like a collector's item. So if they're used a lot, they're not, worth as much because the edges may be frayed. The picture on the card may be rubbed a little bit so it doesn't look as nice. And then there's near mint, which is like fresh out of the pack of cards. It's a beautiful, beautiful looking card. There's no blemishes on it at all. If I want to save money, don't buy the new one. I can buy the one that's like slightly used and save some cash, right? Another example could be, instead of buying the model that comes in the box, if you're buying something like a household appliance, see if you can buy the floor model and save a few $100s, okay? Or at least, $20 or so, okay? Maybe, and I brought this up earlier in the lecture, but buy a model that's scratched on the side, right? If you're going to have that side on the wall anyways, you're never going to notice that scratch. Or if the scratch is towards the bottom, you're never going to notice it, right? So try to find other creative ways that you can find yourself being able to save some money. So what about houses? Here's some practical advice, okay? Think about it this way. Whatever you don't put down as a down payment is how much money you bring in to purchase the house. So you don't borrow that money because you've already paid that much. For instance, if you're buying a $100,000 house and you put down $20,000, you have a down payment of 20% because you've paid $20,000 or 20% of the price tag of that house, okay? Which then means I'm borrowing $80,000, okay? Of course, there's other costs that get put on top because of, certain regulations when you're buying a house. But whatever you don't put down, you borrow, which means, folks, whatever you don't put down, you're going to pay interest on. So one of the things that you can do to ensure that you pay the least amount for your house is to put down the most that you can, okay? So make a large down payment. And if you can, buy cheap. If you find yourself to be a handy person, buy a fixer-upper, okay? So long as you know how to do everything and you're willing to put in the work, that's a big thing, okay? And you're willing to put in the work, buy yourself a house that maybe has some repairs, but you know you can make, okay? Another thing is that, and these aren't necessarily as popular anymore, but make sure when you're borrowing that your interest rate is fixed. Some folks that have lower credit scores can find themselves getting a loan for a house, and that's because the interest rate can change. So you may get in with a smaller interest rate, but then you'll find that the longer you owe the house, the higher the interest rate gets. So make sure, because regulations can change, make sure that your interest rate is fixed, okay? Because you don't want your interest rate to be going up and find yourself that you can't afford your home anymore and end up having to foreclose. So we're actually going to do 2 lectures in the same unit. We're going to move on to number 6 here. Sorry, Darth brings up a good point in chat here. He says the more you bring to the table, the more you're showing that you're less of a risk. And if you're less of a risk, the bank is going to give you a lower interest rate, right? Because you're not as risky, they don't have to essentially, they don't have to make up, money with you because if you don't end up paying, they're going to lose money, right? Because then all they have is the house, and if the house doesn't appreciate, they can find, that's a risk they have to take into account. But if you're showing, hey, I'm not risky, they're going to be willing to give you a lower interest rate because they know that you're going to be able to pay it back. Yeah, so that's very important. Okay, so we've been talking about budgeting, okay, and now we talked about debt, right? So debt is something that occurs because you have not budgeted properly, okay? Or debt is something that occurs because you have decided to make an investment in yourself, be it with a car, with an education, with a house, okay? All of these things, by the way, you should only borrow. Again, the rule is only borrow if you generate wealth, right? Whether it's a car, a house, or an education, okay? Don't go to school just because you want to be with your friends, okay? Don't go to school because you think that, being educated is smart. You can read books to do that, okay? Only go to school if going to school is going to increase your productivity and how much you can earn, right? Only buy a car or buy a more expensive car if it's going to help you get to work more. Yes, not many cars are going to help you get to work more than another car, okay? And only buy a home if you're going to live there for more than 3 years, because there's and also if you can afford to do the things that the landlord would do, of course, because if I'm renting, I don't have to, maybe that I don't have to mow the lawn, I don't have to do maintenance, but if I own the home, I have to do all those things, right? I also have to pay property tax, but you could argue that in rent, property tax is factored in. Anyways, we've talked about budgeting, we've talked about debt and why it's important to avoid it, right? You don't want to pay interest because interest does not get you anywhere. It just steals your income, okay? Number 6, what we're talking about here is, a part that you should be budgeting for is not just to pay extra on your debts, but also to have money set aside, because guys, rainy days happen, okay? Dave Ramsey here, he has a joke. People always call me pessimistic because I keep on saying that it's going to be, it's a rainy day. It's always going to rain sometime. He says, no, I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic. I'm positive. It's going to rain. And then everyone goes, oh, Dave, you're so funny. Anyways, you can watch this video on your own if you want to. I'm going to show it in class, but I'm not going to show it in this video because, again, videoception. So let's just go ahead and go on. You want to make sure that you have a rainy day fund. The book calls this a real world savings fund because, folks, emergencies happen. Repairs either on your home or on some other, you drop your phone. You have a repair on your car that you need to do. Those are going to happen. You want to have money set aside because, guys, if you do not have money set aside, that's money you have to borrow, okay? And again, if you have to end up borrowing, you're going to be paying a lot more. So it'd be much better to have money set aside so that you can be able to pay for those things when they come up. And of course, the thing is, once you use the money in that rainy day fund, you got to start building it back up again. Otherwise, if 2 emergencies happen close together, you can find yourself in trouble. Or even if they don't happen close together, if you have a rainy day fund and you pull from it and then you never replace it, and then another emergency comes up, you end up having to borrowing. Okay, so make sure that as soon as you use it, you start paying it off again. Okay, so here's a practical way that the book talks about to set up a rainy day fund or determine how you should contribute to one. So look at all of your unexpected expenditures. So how many times did you have to get maintenance on your car done? Did you get repairs? How many times did something break in the home? How many times did you have to accidentally, go out and buy some medicine? Something like that. Okay. Total up all of your unexpected expenditures, and then divide that by 12, and then that's how much you should be putting towards a rainy day fund each month. Another metric that I use for my own rainy day fund, me and my wife, we use 3 to 6 months of expenses. If you have a safe job, you probably only need to have 3 months because the odds of you losing your job is smaller. And if you have I don't want to say necessarily a riskier job, but a job where you're more likely to lose your job, or it's based on things that are outside of your control, or maybe you're seasonal, you want to have closer to 6 months of expenses. So there you would just look at, how much do we spend to survive each month on rent, on utilities, on food, so on, and then save up 6 months of that for if you're on say for 3 months. Okay, whatever you feel comfortable with, right? Because of course you always have to remember here with a rainy day fund, you don't want to put like $100,000 in there, because that's a lot of money, right? When you look at how much interest that could be earning, which we'll look at later in this part of the book, that there's a high opportunity cost. So don't look at your rainy day fund as something that's supposed to earn you money. This is supposed to give you peace of mind, because if something happens, you have easy access to some cash. Okay. Okay. So that's all we have. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.